Wow. What a conversation I just had with my new friend, Steve Graves. He has been consulting, mentoring business leaders, business professionals, Fortune 100 companies for the last 3 decades. And he shares such incredible wisdom about growing your business, about growing yourself, about developing as a leader, and helping your team develop. So here is my new friend, Steve Graves. Welcome to Market Mavericks. I'm Matthew Eford. Join me as I speak with leaders who are redefining industries in every corner of the market. From startups to established businesses, we'll uncover the strategies, challenges, and insights that drive success. Get ready to be inspired by the Mavericks who are shaping the future of business. Welcome, everyone, to Market Mavericks. I have Steve Graves here with me. I'm so excited to have Steve with us here out in Arkansas, so I'm glad we have the connectivity through Zoom to be able to do this. But Steve, just give everybody kind of an overview, who you are, what you do within your role within your organization.
Yeah, man, love to. Thanks for letting me be with you today. I appreciate you letting an Arkansan penetrate the veil there. That's a lot of fun. Appreciate that. Yeah, so I live here in Arkansas, and my world actually has three parts to it. I do a little bit of writing. I've written a bunch of books through the years, and I've got a blog that's around faith, leadership, and strategy that
Nice.
20 or 25,000 folks follow. And it's a free weekly deal. That's a little part of my world. The biggest part of my world is I coach CEOs, business owners, and entrepreneurs. I've been doing that for 3 or 4 decades. I usually have one or two kind of huge global CEO, maybe a public company
Okay.
portfolio, and then I'll usually have two or three private, often family businesses, and then a handful of gunslinging entrepreneurs trying to scale or exit or merge or whatever, hang on and survive. I work across all industries, and that's what I've done for a long, long time. And then recently, actually the last 8 or 9 years, I've backed into owning a bunch of companies. And
Okay.
so I actually own or co-own a whole bunch of companies that I've kind of acquired through the years. And then also part of my world is I have tried to keep a global ministry nonprofit in my portfolio every year if I can.
Wow.
I'm able to do that for 20 or 30 years, and so that's been a ton of fun. But that's kind of what I do.
Sure.
I'm a dad I'm a married fella with three adult children who are married, and I've got grandbabies. I've got five on the ground and one in the oven.
Congratulations. That
Yeah,
is what a
absolutely.
sweet time of life.
It's a ton of fun for us. We got babies everywhere. So
That's
that's
fantastic.
kind of that'll give your group just a little snapshot about me.
Yeah, sure. So let's take each piece of that. And I love that you shared. As someone who's involved in multiple things myself, I love meeting another kindred spirit. Talk to us first off. How did you get into writing books? What was that process? Um, Give us some of the backstory of that.
Yeah, great. I mean, I'm just exactly what the person that you mentioned. I'm what I call a portfolio leader. A portfolio leader is somebody that's got a lot going on and they're managing a portfolio. They're not just getting up and going to work at Walmart, which is in
Okay.
our yard, and just that's the one thing they do, and that's everything. My generation, probably because I'm older, my generation was much more used to a single uh, career plate that had one thing in the middle. In today's world, it's very, very common to have what's called a portfolio leader or somebody to have, work one, work two, work three, or whatever kind of a thing. I'm the guy who wanted to be in my career lane by the time I was 35. I beat it by just a few months.
Okay.
I'm a, I'm a generalist, and so I had a lot of different interests in a lot of different things. And then about maybe, Matthew, probably about 12 to 14 years ago, a buddy of mine in Park City, Utah, and another friend in Salt Lake City, basically dear friends of mine, who had ridden through a magazine season where we wrote a magazine called Life at Work
Okay.
and had it, and then we eventually sold it to another company. But these two buddies of mine basically said, "Man, you've got so much content. Why don't you try to create a bigger opportunity for just other than just your small portfolio of CEOs that you work with every day, why don't you offer it to a bigger audience? And so I said, man, I don't know if I could actually even do that. And if I did, I can't imagine anybody wants to read any of that stuff. And so just, I kind of backed into it as a matter of stewardship, not so much ambition and not so much because I was trying to make a side hustle buck or something. It was more of stewardship. I felt like I had some things that I had been saying to the CEOs that I've been working with, and they had made the case that perhaps there's a bigger audience that could enjoy some of that. So
Sure.
that's how I backed into it. I started with a blog, and and then actually years ago started with a few books as well. Some other business partners and I wrote a few books, and so that's how it all started. And I've just been kind of doodling all along the way,
I love
right,
that.
writing along.
And so then tell us about your weekly blog. How does somebody get connected to that? You talk about faith at work. As a fellow believer, I love that. I love taking my faith to work. I believe that Ephesians teaches us that we're all called into ministry, that the teachers, the disciples, the pastors, the leaders in the church, their job is to equip the saints, believers, you and I, for the work of ministry. So I love taking it outside of the four walls of the church. So I love that you're doing that. How does somebody get plugged into that?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah, they just simply need to hit the website Stephen Stephenr Graves Graves.com. Sign up. It's free. I don't do a whole bunch of trying to sell somebody something. I crank out a free blog every week, and
Love
it's
that.
theme based. And it's pretty usable, pretty hopefully it's pretty practical and pretty short. And that's
Sure.
it.
That's great. And especially with everyone's attention span now, the shorter little nuggets like that are great. But it's an action item. It's something that you can take and apply that week. So I love that you're doing that. Or make sure that's included in the show notes. Talk to us about the consulting. So you said you got into there a few months before you turned 35. What was your path into that? So I'm a generalist myself. I love business. I love many things, but talk to us how you kind of got into that role. How did you break into consulting, and where have you seen that take your career over the last few decades for you?
Great question, man. I mean, it's because I'm as old as I am, when I look in the rearview mirror, there's a whole bunch of miles behind me. And so it's a little bit of it's not a straight line story. It's more of a sordid, twisted, a little bit of a
Sure.
journey. But originally, I had one of my original business partners and I created the company that I still run today. And we created it because we wanted to figure out what kind of company could we build that blended biblical wisdom with business excellence. And
I love that.
we wanted to do it through consulting, teaching, mentoring, and writing. And when we did it, we both looked at each other and said, like, has anybody ever paid you for any of that? And we both said, no, not a dime. And so then we said, well,
Yeah.
like, where do we start? And so we just decided we would start with consulting, and we just started cranking out some work, And then some years later, I came to a pretty good understanding that for me, coaching is working with an individual and then adding value to the company along the way.
Cool.
Consulting is working with the company and adding value to the person, the leader along the way. So my world was always focused on a person, a CEO,
Yeah.
a business owner, an entrepreneur, a general manager, a president, or whatever, and then just coming alongside them in their journey. And we've built over the years, I've built 100 or 110 frameworks and models and tools for the toolbox of
Wow.
working alongside a CEO or business owner. And
Sure.
running a company or being at the top of an organization or being a founder, work with a ton of founders, it can be kind of heavy and kind of lonely. And so we've kind of specialized in that world of working with founders and CEOs and business owners, and been a ton of fun. It's just been so much fun, and it's a great reflection and application of who I am at my core.
Yeah.
The book I'm working on right now this year, and hopefully it'll be through early next year, is I'm writing a book about stewardship as a personal operating system.
Nice. Okay.
So
Tell me more.
how do you use stewardship as a way to basically operate one's whole life.
Sure.
And so, you know, coaching leaders is just a great application of my giftedness. You know, if you cut me down the middle, you're going to find somebody who's at my core. You know, I'm a macro strategist,
Okay.
um, not a micro strategist. I'm a macro strategist. I'm a connector, not a networker. Like I actually don't work a room very well. Like I'm a little bit kind of I just don't. But every day I'm connecting party A with party B for reason one, reason two, reason three, whatever. Every day, I'm an encourager, and then I'm a content farmer. And so those four things find great application for me in the world of coaching executives. And so, you know, over the last 30 or 40 years, we've built this business called Cornerstone. It's really funny, Matthew. We were in the last now couple of years, I was actually shrinking down the company to kind of sunset it a little bit. And I
Okay.
wasn't shutting it down, but I was definitely taking fewer and fewer and fewer clients. And then about a year or two ago, a good buddy of mine named Ben, and then my son came along and said, "Man, what are you doing with the wheels down on this plane? Let's put the wheels back up and let's relaunch this
I
thing." And
love it.
we've relaunched Cornerstone in the last year. We've added a bunch of new things, like we've added a new thing called Cornerstone Plus,
Okay.
which is a membership-based, great offering. Would love for you to, you know, offer it to your folks. And,
Sure.
we've relaunched Cornerstone, which is kind of my coaching practice, which has been a ton of fun.
And you're getting to do that with your son. What a cool experience.
It is. It's a ton of fun, man. Totally a surprise for me and a lot of fun.
I love that. So then let's get back to your original list of things that you did. You talked about you kind of backed your way into business ownership, parts ownership of a lot of businesses. Has that been from your mentorship or has that been from investments? That may be a little too personal of a question, but how did you kind of backdoor into some of those deals that you're a part of?
No, actually, a great question and a very fair question, and a helpful question for people who've never gotten there. Um, Two or three quick context. I had realized about 10 years ago that 50% of my portfolio was either buying, selling, merging, or there was some kind of event. And so I
Okay.
was helping a lot of clients actually exit and make a lot of money, which I was thrilled because they were paying me some great money and I was thrilled to do it.
Sure.
But I began to realize that if I was part of the ownership team, it might alter the way I was able to enjoy some of the rewards and the outcomes as well. So I don't know, 10 or 12 years ago, I started moving into some ownership roles. Your specific question, which is a very insightful one, some of it was I simply swapped, instead of me getting a fee for my coaching,
Nice. Yeah. Equity.
I swapped and took an equity position. Other ones along the way, I did that and/or I made an investment. You know, I just invested in another company yesterday, and so you know, along the way, I've kind of used any different plan and approach or path to buying in and getting in. And you know, and I mean, the thing about private companies is unless there's an event, or unless you have some kind of distribution vehicle that you've set up already, you know, just because you own a private company doesn't really necessarily do anything for you. And so
Sure.
you got to be driving your ownership somewhere. It's got to fit an overall model in your portfolio, which has been fortunate for me. I've been able to do it. So I've owned or co-owned companies ranging from sports media all the way to Gen Z travel, all the
Wow.
way to consumer goods and beef, eggs, seafood, all kind of things, you know, just different kinds of companies through the years.
I love that. So give us some insight into, as an investor, what are you looking for when you're making an investment? And then now as a business owner who is a partial business owner, what's the setup that you yourself are looking for? If someone that's listening to this is saying, "Hey, I need to take on an investor," or "I want to have an exit," what advice would you give from your perspective as someone who doesn't just consult with this, doesn't just mentor with this, but you're actually doing this yourself?
Yeah, great questions. Lots of stuff underneath the three or four parts of that question. What makes a great investment is a little bit of a squirrely question because, you can do all the diligence in the world. If you're doing venture investing, most ventures just don't work.
Sure.
Most small businesses go out of business. We don't hear about them. We only hear about the ones that, the restaurant that explodes and becomes Chick-fil-A or
Yeah.
whatever. We don't hear about all the ones that just turn every 2 years on the corner and somebody new owns a new Mexican restaurant there or whatever, and people who were invested lost everything they had in that one. Most businesses don't work; they just don't, and that's the reason why a lot of people just don't try to get into owning businesses. Um, I always index toward a little bit more toward the leader,
Okay.
and after that, I will diligence the idea. A lot of people do that conversely, and I get that. I don't argue with them. Part of it's probably my background. I've been in part of a company, an organization called Praxis the last 13, 14 years. And we index toward the leader, not necessarily the idea. So I'm going to diligence the person that I'm investing in, that individual, that leader. And I'm going to ask the question, are they really rightly suited with their experience, their education, their background, their gifting, their fit, their wiring? Do they have the right motor, the right everything? Do they have all the right stuff for the business at its current season
Sure.
and its next season? Not were they incredibly successful somewhere else? It's like, do they fit here now?
Yeah.
And can do what we need this business to do in this next run? So I'll do that. And then you just got to make sure that you go through whatever criteria you've created that filters out something being a good idea versus an okay idea versus a bad idea. And
Okay.
in my world, if possible, you'd like to objectify that. You'd like to get it beyond I got a buddy who just really is begging me to get involved in something. You got to objectify it and say, how do I think I'm going to ever get my return here? Like,
Sure.
what's going to happen for me to win in this thing? Unless it's not really an investment, if it's really just a donation disguised as an investment, and I've got a framework that I talk about the four quadrants of ministry and business, return and stuff like
Okay.
that. There's a blog on it somewhere, I think.
Okay.
And
I'll
really
find it and put it in the show notes.
love to let your folks read it. But if it's really a donation, if I'm really just trying to help out a friend or help fuel a cause, and I don't really have to have a return, that's a different animal. But if it's a straight up, I'm gonna put it in this one, not that one for a return, then I have to have a model of what my diligence tells me, what my green lights are. They signal to me worth putting money in. So that's
Sure.
a few tips there. Thoughts, comments before I jump on your second part of your question?
No, no, that is excellent.
Yeah. To your other question, you know, when to take on capital, when to take on growth capital, when to give up equity. Those are all really, really contextually hard questions. There's very few I mean, there are some textbooks that say this is always when you do this,
Sure.
but so much of that depends on the life cycle and stage of the founder and or the leader, and the life cycle and stage of the business compared to the market and the momentum that the business product or services are in.
Okay.
And one book I wrote is called The Five Tasks, TASKS.
Okay.
It's the five things every senior leader must do. They must set direction, going there, not there. Set speed. You don't set the speed of the market. You set the speed that you're going to relate to the speed of the market.
Okay.
Direction, speed, risk. I'm going to risk all of my farm. I'm going to risk all of your farm. I'm going to risk half of each of our farms or somebody else's farm, but somebody's got to put risk capital. Somebody has to put capital to risk somewhere for deals to stand up and scale, So so it's set direction, speed, risk, resources, and culture. Depending on what you're trying to do with your risk and your speed and your direction, you might have to have outside capital. The worst thing in the world you might can do is just bootstrap your way through
Sure.
because you don't want to have any other partners or whatever. Now, conversely, if you don't know how to be a partner, make sure you learn a little bit about partnerships before you just pony up and take, $100 from somebody and give them half your company.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden now you have a whole nother dynamic, not just building your company, it's managing the partners. Does it make sense?
Sure. Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's such a unique dynamic, right? You take on a partner in that arena. They hopefully are bringing something, some kind of skill set to the table that they're not sometimes just financial, but hopefully there's some kind of synergies that you can work with them. But it is definitely, it's just different. It's different than being a solopreneur and doing everything yourself.
You got it. I've got another grid somewhere. There's a blog somewhere that, when I'm looking, when I want to look at a company and I'm going to ask and answer, do I think this company has a chance to win?
Okay.
Now, again, you can have all of this and the percentages will say you're not going to win. But if you at least got these things in place, maybe you can win. The first is capital that's smart, appropriate, and uncomplicated.
Okay.
The worst thing in the world a small to medium-sized entrepreneur can do is have non-smart capital, inappropriate capital, and complicated capital. It will absolutely suffocate an entrepreneur. Okay. So get capital that's smart, appropriate, and uncomplicated. You bundle that with needle moving strategy.
Okay.
And needle moving strategy is not just, it's not just, opportunistic ideation. It's not just chasing shiny things. It's saying, if I do these 5 things, I will move that mountain of dirt right over there to right over there in 6 days.
Yeah.
It's a needle moving strategy that will move the momentum of your business. And then you bundle all that with what I call a rock star operator. Somebody has to be wired to do the messy, hard work of building the business during the grind stages of a business. And if you have all those things in place, you got a chance to win. If you
Sure.
don't have stuff in place, I mean, why you might as well be gambling in Vegas or something. Who thinks I'm going to win
Yeah.
otherwise? Does that make sense?
Oh, it definitely does. And you hear the horror stories, right? That it's a family friend, it's a family member, and they tug at your heartstrings and you make that investment thinking they're going to do a good job and you haven't vetted it well to say, no, they actually don't know what they're doing. It's not that they don't have a good idea, but they're not the one to take this idea to the next level to scale it.
Yeah, Matthew, I've said for years, an idea is not a business. Converting an idea into a business takes a process and strategy and plans and people, all that kind of stuff. But the number of people I have tried to help unravel their deal structure because they had is crazy. And I've been in some myself, so it's not like I'm some guy that's immune from it. But
Sure.
eventually it'll suffocate or handcuff an entrepreneur for sure if you're not careful.
Sure. So talk to us about culture, right? You shared earlier that's one of the pieces of framework. Can a business be successful? Can it scale? With your experience and all the businesses that you've served over your time, mentoring business owners, what do you see as a piece that you can help develop a culture at a business and help them translate that culture from just the business owner or the CEO throughout the organization? What have you seen as a helpful way or a practical way to do that?
Well, again, I know I've said it every time, but that's really a great question. Shows you have some experience with exposure into business worlds and
Well, thank you.
you know, one thing that I've seen that's really helpful is to make sure that that the leader and slash leaders of the organization are able to, along with the people, create a set of operating values or operating guidelines or principles or whatever that you're willing to say at the end of the day, this is how we do work here. This
Okay.
is what it means to work here. And if you don't describe that, what other people are going to do is they're going to bring what they did over there to here, and they're just going to think that this is how it works here because
Sure.
it works. And so, and it's up to you to clarify exactly what that means and doesn't mean. You can't just put it put the words together and frame it. I mean, you got to define and articulate it, but you also have to actually help show how do you institutionalize that, how that comes to life, how those core values are animated inside your organization. And then over time, what you have to do is you have to ask and answer the hard question: do we really spend our money like this? Do we
Yeah.
really reward people like this?
Yeah.
Do we make the hard decisions like this? Like, what is this really how we operate? And is this what we allow to happen in our ecosystem or not? And if it is, then all of a sudden you might have some values that are becoming part of your culture. A culture can become an incredible asset to a company. I mean, like, just we'll use Chick-fil-A again since we talked about it. Really, think about how critical the culture, the Chick-fil-A, institutional culture model is for us, every Chick-fil-A owner operator and the 100 or 200 people that work there all over the world, America for sure. The culture piece is just like having money in the bank to an entrepreneur if
Yeah.
it's working, if that flywheel is working the right way. Now,
Sure.
if the culture turns downward and you're not in the flywheel upward, but you're in the doom loop downward, okay, it'll kill you. I mean, it'll crush you just like
Sure.
anything. So,
Yeah, I actually had an opportunity to speak to David Salyers last month, and we were referencing Chick-fil-A's culture, and he said he was telling me that one of the operators that he met with that really stood out to him is he said, I'm a leadership development organization disguised as a chicken salesman." And I said, man, what a great thing. But right, I mean, Chick-fil-A has developed that, and a lot of people talked about it. We love it. We service several of their locations in the corporate office. So I love the organization. I love their mission. I love what they're doing. But for my boys, right, if they don't come to work with us as an early job, like when Walker, my oldest son, gets to that age, he's maybe 10 years away from that, 7, 8 years away from that. I want him to go work at Chick-fil-A because I know systematically he's going to be invested in. They have a system of developing leaders, and so they have folks that say, "Hey, I want to be developed. I'm a young leader. I feel like I'm called to be a leader. I want to go somewhere to be a young leader." And so then you just have a bunch of leaders in your organization that are developing, that are growing, that are hungry, and they know the mission. And so I love that you said that, and I love that you pointed that out because so often, right, you walk in somewhere and they have the mission statement and then the core values written on the wall and their fancy words, and it's like, I don't know what that means. That integrity may look different to me than it looks to you. So having that defined, but then also, does it actually impact the way that we, number one, like you said, spend our money? And that's a humongous thing. If we're going to say it and not do it, then it's not actually a core value. And our team will see that because they're going to see that we're saying one thing publicly, but in private or within the organization, we're just not following up with that.
yeah, love it. Couldn't agree more, man. Love everything you just said, and ditto, ditto, ditto. Just
Well, you're very kind, Steve. I want to we need to keep talking. You definitely, one of your things was encouragement, and you're a natural encourager. So I appreciate that. You're very kind. Talk to us about mistakes, right? I love sharing mine. I love folks coming on here sharing. Nobody's perfect outside of Jesus Christ. What's a mistake you've made over the life of your business, and what's something you learned from it?
yeah. Wow. Again, because of my age, I've got so many. It's just a matter of picking out which one we want to talk about. Not every business that I've ever been involved in has made it. Um, um,
So tell me about a business that didn't make it. Tell me that's a unique perspective, and I
yeah,
love that perspective.
we
Tell me
put,
about, if you don't mind, a business that didn't make it, and what's some of the reason behind that. What did you learn?
yeah, okay. Years and years ago, we were involved in a business. I was involved in a business, and in hindsight, being able to, you kind of do a little forensic analysis after the fact, the old
Sure.
2020
Oh yeah.
is hindsight 2020. But in hindsight, I got too emotionally connected to the founder
Okay.
and was trying to be more of a cheerleader support system, and I overstretched what I was thinking was trying to be a good friend. I overstretched the boundaries of good stewardship. Like I just wasn't being a calculated good investor. I
Okay.
was a fan and just, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. I was probably operating with some bad theology in the sense that it was more on my shoulders than it was God's, and I was probably I probably took a role that was inaccurately more my responsibility. So that was another, in hindsight, thing that I've tried to learn and grow from in the future. Another thing that clearly happened with that one is we were not doing audits and evaluations in disciplined fashion. We
Okay.
weren't to mile markers and saying, how's it going? Let's make some objective analysis. Let's ask and answer, is this really worth going? And so actually, to be honest, Matthew, years later, I wrote a blog on when is it time to shut down?
Sure.
And I didn't reference that, but in the back of my mind, I wished I would have had somebody that had taught me earlier on, look, when these signals are all on the table, it's probably time to shut it down.
Yeah.
Now the problem is that if you have a founder that's just got another $100 and they can keep the lights on one more month, it's probably going to stay alive for one more month. One of my another blog, I hate to keep referencing them, but I
No,
wrote
no,
a
you're
blog.
fine.
Most founders are either what I call rich, king, or famous.
Okay.
One of those three images describes how they think about themselves and how they relate back to their organizations. Now, it's not a moral thing, and it's not a this is better than that thing.
Sure.
It's a matter of knowing which one you are and making sure that you've accounted for that structure. It's very hard for people who are kings to scale. The only way to scale for a king is to overtake another territory.
Yeah.
You don't see
That's
a
a
lot.
good, yeah.
You don't see 5 or 6 kings just dividing up and saying, "You stay on your side, and I'll stay on." Kidding me? It's like, no, I'm king of my land. You stay out of my world, kind of thing. So, um, one of the things is that often we don't evaluate and really bring critical, objective analysis to, is the organization worth continuing or not?
Sure.
Um, and so, I had a bad view of failure back then, and a bunch of stuff like that. So that would be some of the learnings and growth I've had from a failed business, as
I
an
love that.
example.
That's great feedback. Number one, obviously you're enamored with the founder, right? I mean that what a hard conversation to have with somebody that you're a fan of, and,
Yeah.
and that you're especially as a man of faith, right? I want you to do a good job. I want you to succeed, but I've got to have some difficult conversations with you. So talk to us about, if you don't mind, some of those red flags, like when somebody's evaluating their business, right? That they've got a small business or they're doing it themselves. I know we've got several folks that listen that they're solopreneurs and they're considering like, hey, do I keep doing my business or do I go back into corporate world? What are some of those red flags that you see that's like, hey, you really need to have kind of a gut check, a heart to heart, and let's reconsider that. What are some of those red flags you see?
Yeah. Well, just off the cuff, a few things. You know, you eventually have got to have some business momentum where you've got at least a little bit of tailwinds. Not everything is just a mountain challenge that if I can just get around this corner, it's going to all fall in place. You
Sure.
got to eventually be able to say, and that's the reason I'll always ask young entrepreneurs, so where do you have some natural divine tailwinds in your business? And I'll say, is it your customers? Is it your offering? Is it your finances? Is it your people? Is it the product or the service or whatever? So if you don't have any tailwinds over time, you don't have any momentum around your core idea, it's going to be really hard to ever build a sustainable business enterprise around it. Um, Number two, eventually you've got to figure out your financial modeling. um, it doesn't mean that you have to be making gazillions of dollars right now, but you got to know what your economic formula is, and
Sure.
are you making progress in that economic formula? Are you proving up your economic formula? Not, are you just anecdotally proving up that one more person said, "Oh man, that's a great chicken sandwich."
Yeah.
Like, great. I mean, I can buy my way in to getting 10 customers to say, my chicken salad or my coconut cream pie is the best that they've ever had. The question is can I strip away all of the propped up, incentivized fans around me in my business? Can I strip away those? And does a pure objective customer base say, that's a pretty good exchange. I'll give you $6 for that slice of coconut pie.
Yeah.
And then by the way, will they go tell somebody else, or do I have to constantly incentivize them and overjuice the spend for them to bring me new customers? So there's some business best practices that have to be applied to every business enterprise in every stage of business. All businesses go through, from my world, there's the 0 to 1 phase, there's the 1 to 5 phase, and the 5 to 500 phase of their business. And
Okay.
business has to go through those. The question is how is your business doing with the objective, the KPIs, all the things that need to evaluate
Sure.
business alive and healthy, and does it have momentum or not? Now, if you're Matthew, if you're in the stage and you say, look, we know for 18 months we're behind the curve and we have nothing but headwinds, that's fine. But if you said it's going to be 18 months and then we're going to turn the corner and we're going to have 20% tailwinds and 80% headwinds,
Sure.
we're going to have 100 customers and whatever. But then, you wake up in 7 years from now, you still got
Yeah. Your face is raw from the wind that you've been running against. Yeah.
you got it, Jack. You
Yeah.
got it. Then what you
Yeah.
need, somebody needs to have, kind of the wherewithal to sit down and say, hey, Steve, partner, I love you to death. You are so amazing with this, and this. But I'm gonna tell you, man, that food truck idea of the coconut cream pie that you launched 7 years ago, it's not going anywhere, dude. And you know
Yeah.
what? Don't worry about paying me back. You keep my $5,000. Just shut it down and go do something that has a better chance to win in this world's market.
Sure. I love that. So you said 0 to 1, 1 to 5, and 5 to 500.
Yeah.
Is that specific? Is that revenue? Is that customers? Is that
Yeah.
employees?
Great Great
What's
question. Great question. It has nothing to do with the age of the business,
okay?
and it has nothing to do with the size of the business. It
Okay.
has everything to do with the stage and the cycle time the business is in the market that it happens to be in right now. Chick-fil-A is clearly in the 5 to 500.
Sure.
Walmart up the street from me is in the 5 to 500. I know a $200 million company that's in the 5 to 500 in the market it's in the segment it's in. So
Okay.
it's not the size, it's the stage and the cycle time of the business itself. Does that
So
make sense?
can you give me an example of the 0 to 1 and then
Yeah,
1 to 5? Like what?
0 to 1 is the stand-up phase of every business. You're
Okay.
going from zero, you're going from an idea around happy hour and drinks to
Yeah.
standing and launching something. And it could be a service or a product or whatever, but you're going to actually launch it and get it up the ground. You're going to stand it up from an idea
Okay.
to something. And when it's stood up, then now what we're doing is we're testing out our theory of our business. What is the theory of our business? And then what you do is you end up asking and answering. And the theory of the business is this constant triangulation between someone's customer and their offering and their financial, the economics.
Okay.
And you just work those things like crazy until you have enough momentum that you say, you know what? I think we're no longer just in push phase. I think we're in pull phase a little bit, and we have some growth happening.
Okay.
It can be organic. You might can still be buying your way through growth, but there's growth. Somewhere, somehow, we've moved from 1 food truck to 4 food trucks.
Sure.
The market has validated my idea, not my own money has just kept pushing and pressing and proving. The market itself, the customer segment says, hey, you know what? I'll stay with my model. A piece of pie is worth $4.95 all day long. I'll buy that all day long. Matter of fact, I'll buy a whole pie and take it home for a special party or something. Versus if I set my price for that pie as a slice is $40 and the whole pie is $500, like who buys that pie? I
Yeah.
have no.
I'm not buying that pie.
I'm not buying that pie. I'm out. And so the market. So it's that constant vetting. And then once you start moving up, then there's also some maturation and organizational dynamics of the company.
Okay.
No longer is it just founder led, or no longer is it single personality led or whatever. You actually have an organizational footprint that is delivering that product or service into the market. And that's when you kind of move from the 0 to 1 into the 1 to 5 stage.
Okay.
Then you begin to move from that into some scale, and scale is one signal that you're moving on through. Another is you're able to begin to combat and compete with competitors. Because here's the deal: if you raise some money and start a food truck, as an example, and it explodes, you and I both know what's going to happen. It won't be long till somebody says, "Hey,
Yeah.
man, I think I'm going to do one on the north side of your town." And you know what? I bet I can make a pretty close recipe to what you're doing. And I'm just going to go do another one. And what you got to do now is figure out, how do you compete in a free world market? And
Yeah.
so it's the dynamics and the stage of your business, not the age of your business. There's some businesses that live in 0 to 1 forever, or some businesses, they just hyper speed their way through because they happen to come up with just a really great innovation or something.
Sure. No, I love that. And I love the idea of being able to evaluate our businesses and have a little bit of a gut check around the idea of, am I kind of in that 0 to 1? Am I more standing up my business now? Or am I starting to see some scale? Am I starting to see this is beyond me just as the founder? Do I have a team? Do I have infrastructure? Do we have a system in place? EOS is a popular system, business management system a lot of folks use. We've implemented that ourselves. Are we able to become duplicable across the customer experience across multiple folks? And then are we gangbusters like Chick-fil-A? Are we adding locations, hundreds of locations? That's the 5 to 500, which I'm not in. One day hopefully we'll be there. We're keep working, stretching for that.
No, you might get there. Hang on.
Yeah,
Keep
but
going.
we're working. So we got 5 locations right now, which is really cool. So, but we're stretching to push ourselves to grow, and I love having these conversations, right? Because Peter Drucker loved one of his quotes: "The bottlenecks are always at the top." Right?
Yeah.
I am the rate limiting step of growth within my organization. Our audience have heard me say this a million times. If I cannot grow my capacity, I cannot grow my throughput, I cannot grow my organization. I am the rate limiting step of growth. So sometimes that means I need to either get out of the way or I need to grow.
Yeah.
And so
You got
these conversations are fantastic. And I hope everybody who's listening to that is taking a self reflection of where am I at in this stage. So let me wrap up. I want to be respectful of your time. I could talk to you all day, Steve. This has been excellent. I appreciate your wisdom. I appreciate what you're sharing and how open and transparent you've been. One of the things that we love to talk around here is get advice on the work-life pull. I believe balance is a myth. I think that's a poor thing to reach for. But talk to me how you navigated the pull between your time at work as an entrepreneur and the many things that you're a part of and your time at home.
Yeah, well, I agree with your premise. What I call it and what we call it in our practice is it's creating what I call the composite scorecard of life. What you want to do is you want to win with a composite scorecard. You don't want to just be an A+ dad and a C- husband, and
Sure.
oh, by the way, a D+ a neighbor, and oh, by the way, a C- investor and partner. Like, my deal would be this: if you can actually do pretty well and have a composite score of B+ or B- or A-, whatever, across all the things that you're doing, across all the hats, because that's real life. Real
Yeah.
life, you figuring out what are the assignments God has called you to versus the opportunities that the swirling world around us would love and push and press into you. And the assignments are the things that you have a God-given stewardship to be a steward over. That's your job. And those are the things that you do have to figure out how you synchronize your flow with those things. And, I've never met a person ever that lived a flourishing life of any kind of health and balance, to use that term, that didn't know how to say no, not now,
Yeah.
or not yet. You have to learn how to have discipline, and you just have to. And so, that's an important thing. It's important to have people around you that reinforce your worldview and your value system about stuff like that. If I had a business partner one time, years and years ago, who was in a stage of life that he had a bunch of little kids at home, but he also decided he wanted to be a big giant marathon runner. And I remember one time I went to him and because I was an investor in his business, and I said, "Hey man, I'm not trying to tell you what to do, and I'm not trying to overreach, but I do think you got to figure out. Well, first of all, let me ask you, all your buddies that are run investors, how's their family doing?
Yeah.
Oh, they're all single. I got you. Everyone is single. Well, let me ask you this. How's all their work doing? Oh, they all work for their dad and their dad's insurance company and their dad's this company. And so none of them had a job and none of them had a family. So no wonder they wanted to run marathons every month all over the country. And but that I said, dude, that's not you.
Yeah.
You better, that's not in your world. That's an opportunity, not an assignment for you. So it's not easy. The theory is easy on paper. Bringing it to real life and executing on it on a day by day, week by week basis is not easy. But my deal is every time I fall off the horse, my deal is I'm getting back on and trying again.
I
I'm
love it.
not going to let the failure of, and I did better with some kids during some stages of their life as a parent than I did others.
Sure.
And some weeks I do better as a husband or a grandparent, but when I fall off, I'm jumping back on and giving it another ride.
I love it. None of us are perfect. What a great testament to share to our kids that in our imperfection that we're teaching them they don't have to be perfect either because
Yeah.
they know we're not perfect. They know they're not perfect, but we're not putting undue stress on them. So I love that. Let me wrap up with these two questions. Two questions I love to ask. Number one, you're an author. You've written many books. You've co-authored many books. Outside of something that you've been a part of, what is a book that you've read, call it the last 24 months, that's really impacted you that you think would be applicable to our audience?
Wow, really hard question because I do love to read and
Me
I'm
too.
just read all the time. I mean, I always have 10 books going all the time. In the last couple of years, I read the biography of both Tim Keller and Eugene Peterson,
Yeah.
two people that I've read a lot and who both happened to have the chance to know Tim, but not Eugene.
Wow.
I did, but I've read everything that they've had and just impacted me greatly. So reading their biographies was pretty moving for me personally. And so I'm not a guy who always reads every biography, but those two biographies were great for me. But I mean, I just read so many different books. It's just kind of like what month do you ask me or what week? But those two books, if my wife would say those two books were really impactful because I talked about them a lot. Those were
Yeah.
two really important books.
I have shared Tim's biography with many people. That was what an incredible man. That what an incredible leader. What an incredible follower of Jesus Christ. I'm excited to hear that you know him, that you knew him, and I will look forward to one day meeting him. But I enjoyed hearing a lot of his backstory. Right, I mean, everybody's got a story, and to
That was
hear,
it. That was it. But getting behind the scenes was just it was just really, really rich for me. So
yeah.
couldn't
Yeah,
agree
I
more.
love that. So then let's wrap up on this. Any last piece of advice that you would give if you could go back 10 years ago? What kind of advice outside of what you've already shared would you wish you would have known?
I don't know, Matthew. That's such a hard question. I think today it's so easy to compress your learnings and learn faster. You don't just have to learn from your mistakes. You can actually learn through wisdom. One person said, the wise man does at the beginning what the fool does at the end.
Amen.
And so, it just like if you could learn on the front end and you can compress your learning by learning through people. So just anything you can do to be in an active learning environment. So like honestly, and I'm not trying to turn into a sales pitch, but that's the reason why we started this Cornerstone Plus offering so that we had a better chance to provide a faster learning curve for people in their entrepreneurial or their business or their life and work journey. So anything you can do to compress your learning through relationships or reading a book or listening to a podcast or whatever, do it and then try to put something into application. And the last one, just make sure you're working on formation. Don't just pack your head with new this, I can stat this, I can quote that. Make sure you're doing deep formation work of who you are as a person and as a leader, not just, picking up, stuff.
Yeah, I love that. It's not just information for information's sake, right? We're trying to have information for transformation, and we're trying to be changed by the things that we're learning. And Proverbs 13:20, he who walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools suffers harm. Which is exactly what you're saying, right? I've quoted that a lot on this theme here around that. That's part of the impetus of why I started the podcast. Was trying to surround myself with wise people. It rubs off on you, and so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Steve, I appreciate so much your time. So somebody's looking to get involved with the Cornerstone Plus. How do they get connected to you? You gave your website earlier. I've got some links that we're going to put in the description of some of those blogs, but how do they get specifically with the Cornerstone Plus?
Go to cornerstoneco.com. Cornerstone CO, like companies, cornerstoneco.com, and just go in there and you'll see up at the top of tab, and just go to Cornerstone Plus, find it. Perfect. And then there's Q&A, questions and answers and all that, and or just find me, email me, whatever. Anybody that's interested, go to Cornerstone Co.
Okay.
You can find it right there, and love to have any of your folks involved in that. Love it.
Well, fantastic. Well, Steve, appreciate your time, man. You have a blessed day, and enjoy that Arkansas. I don't know if y'all have got good weather or not, but
it's spectacular.
In the SEC time, and now we're in football season. So, it is. As a Georgia fan, it's been a pretty good year the last several years. So,
it was a good weekend for you. I know that.
It was. Yes.
We squeaked off a Tennessee victory, but I don't know if we're going to win another game. We'll see.
We'll see.
Our football team to pick it up a little bit.
Yeah, amen. Well, thankfully ours came and played all four corners. But Steve, thank you so much for joining us. Everybody, thank you for being part of Market Mavericks. We'll see you soon. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Market Mavericks. We hope you're walking away inspired and ready to take your own adventure to the next level. Don't forget to follow the show to keep up with our latest episodes. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to subscribe, share it with others who could benefit. And hey, if you know a market maverick who has a story that needs to be heard, please drop their name in the comments. We would love to bring their insights to the show. Until next time, keep pushing boundaries and leading with purpose.